I took the Hornsea 2 contract because it looked clean. 6 weeks on, 6 off. Ørsted name on the paperwork. The kind of job where you show up, follow the checklist, and collect your pay without anyone asking questions you don't want to answer. I'd been working offshore wind for 3 years by then. Mostly short-term gigs, mostly smaller outfits that didn't care much about your CV as long as you had your GWO and could swing a wrench without dropping it in the drink. Hornsea 2 was bigger, professional, the kind of operation that had actual HR and safety protocols thick enough to choke on. That should have felt like a step up. Probably it was. I figured routine would keep me safe. Show up on time, do the work, don't freelance, don't mouth off. Keep your head down and your float coat zipped. That was the plan. That's always been the plan, and it's kept me employed and mostly intact for the better part of a decade working jobs where the ocean wants to kill you and the equipment costs more than your house. The recruiter, guy named Dalton, sounded Danish, talked like a LinkedIn post, said they needed a mechanical tech for preventative maintenance cycles. Standard stuff. Gearbox checks, hydraulic line inspections, bolt torque verifications. I'd done it all before on smaller farms. Hornsea 2 was just bigger. More turbines, more paperwork. Same North Sea trying to freeze your fingers off. Dalton didn't ask much. Check my certs, confirm my availability, sent over the contract same day. The pay was decent. Not great, but decent. Better than my last gig at Westermost Rough anyway, and that job had me sharing a cabin with a guy who snored loud enough to register on sonar. I signed it the next morning. Figured I'd bank the 6 weeks, take the break, maybe actually fix the guttering on my flat for once. Clean step up. That's what I kept telling myself. The crew transfer vessel left from Hull just after 6 in the morning. January cold. The kind that gets in through your coveralls no matter how many layers you're wearing. I showed up early with my duffel and my certs in a waterproof folder, same as always. The CTV was a Windcat type, 12-seater, aluminum hull, built for speed and stability in weather that'd turn a regular RIB into a washing machine. The name on the bow was something generic, Offshore Endeavor or Windward Express or one of those names they all have. I don't remember. I wasn't paying that much attention. Jonathan Allen was the skipper. Older guy, maybe early 50s, with the kind of face that had spent decades getting sandblasted by salt spray. He checked my name off a clipboard and pointed me toward the passenger cabin without much ceremony. "Stow your kit and strap in," he said. His accent was coastal. Yorkshire, maybe Lincolnshire. Clipped and flat. "We're wheels up in 5. I did what he said. There were 3 other workers on the crossing. 2 I didn't recognize. Contractors, probably doing short rotations. And 1 woman about my age with Siemens Gamesa patches on her jacket. She nodded at me. I nodded back. Nobody talked much. That's normal. 6 in the morning, 30K ride into open water, you save your energy. The engine spooled up with that deep twin diesel growl, and then we were off. The ride out took about an hour, maybe a bit more. The sea wasn't flat, but it wasn't bad either. 1 to 2 meter swell, wind out of the northwest at 15 knots. The CTV handled it fine. We hit the occasional wave that sent spray over the windscreen, but nothing that made Jonathan slow down. I sat near the starboard window and watched the coastline shrink behind us. For the first 20 minutes, it's just gray water and gray sky. Then the turbines start showing up on the horizon. Just white dots at first, barely visible. But they get bigger fast, taller. The sense of scale doesn't really hit until you're close enough to see the blades turning. Hornsea 2 has 165 turbines. I knew that from the site brief Dalton sent over. Each one's a Siemens Gamesa 8 megawatt model. Rotor diameter 200 and something meters. Hub height 100 and something more. The numbers don't mean much until you're actually looking at one. They lined up across the water in rows. Perfect spacing. Geometric. The blades turned slow, cutting through the air with that faint whooshing sound you can hear. even over the engines if you're paying attention. I wasn't paying that much attention. I was thinking about the job. 6 weeks of bolt checks and oil samples. Routine. Predictable. The engine tone shifted about 40 minutes in. Jonathan throttled back as we closed on the array. The ride smoothed out. The woman with the Siemens patches pulled out her phone and took a picture through the window. One of the contractors muttered something about needing coffee. I kept watching the turbines. There were a lot of them. We pulled up alongside the transition piece just before 8. The TP is the part that connects the turbine tower to the foundation below the waterline. Basically a big yellow steel cylinder with a boat landing platform and a ladder running up the outside. This one had B-47 stenciled on the side in black letters. Jonathan brought the CTV in smooth. No drama. He'd done this 1,000 times. The deck crew threw the fenders over and tied off, and then we were stable enough to disembark. "Watch your step," Jonathan said. "Platform's wet." "It always is." I grabbed my duffel, waited my turn, and stepped across the gap onto the TP platform. The metal grating was slick. The wind was worse here than it had been on the water. It came in hard and cold, humming through the tower structure overhead. That's when I saw Kyle Thompson. He was waiting at the base of the ladder. Tall guy, maybe 6'1", lean build. Sandy hair cropped close, pale green eyes, narrow face. He wore clean coveralls and a sight jacket with site authority printed across the back. Lanyard with an ID badge, clipboard in one hand. He looked at me the way you'd look at a package you weren't expecting. "Bernard Luna," he said. "That's me. Paperwork." I pulled the folder out of my duffel and handed it over. GWO certificates, offshore medical, Ørsted induction confirmation, the whole stack. Kyle flipped through it slowly, really slowly, like he was reading every word, looking for something. I stood there and waited. The wind kept humming. One of the other workers climbed past us up the ladder without a word. Kyle stopped on my GWO cert, stared at it for a few seconds. Then he moved on to the medical. "When'd you complete your sea survival refresh?" he asked. "November," I said. "It's on the cert." "I can see that." He kept looking. I don't know what he was hoping to find. An expired date, maybe. A forged signature. Something that'd give him a reason to send me back on the CTV. That's what it felt like anyway. But everything was in order. It always is. I'm careful about that. Finally, Kyle handed the folder back. "You're cleared," he said. Didn't sound happy about it. "Thanks. Follow me." He led me up the ladder into the turbine tower. It's a long climb, 20-odd meters, maybe more. My duffel banged against my leg the whole way. By the time we reached the top platform, my shoulders were tight and my hands were cold. Inside the tower, it was quieter, still windy, but muffled. The air smelled like grease and paint and seawater. There was a personnel lift running up the center of the tower, but Kyle didn't head for it. He stopped on the first platform and turned around. "Welcome talk," he said. "Won't take long." There were 2 other workers on the platform. One of them was the Siemens woman from the CTV. The other was a younger guy I hadn't seen before. They both looked like they'd rather be somewhere else. Kyle didn't waste time. He ran through the basics: work rotations, meal times, bunk assignments, emergency muster points. All business, no warmth. He talked like he was reading from a script, and maybe he was. His tone was flat, procedural. The kind of voice you'd hear in a corporate safety video. I'd sat through a dozen talks like this. I stopped listening after the first minute and just nodded when it seemed appropriate. Then Kyle reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out 3 laminated cards on lanyards. "Before the toolbox meeting," he said, "you need to read and acknowledge the site rules." He handed 1 card to me, 1 to the Siemens woman, 1 to the younger guy. The card was about the size of a playing card. Laminated plastic, hole punched at the top with a blue lanyard looped through. There was text printed on both sides. small font, black on white. I flipped it over. The rules didn't read like normal safety guidelines. Most sites give you the standard stuff. Wear your PPE, clip in at height, no lone working, report hazards. Maybe some specific procedural notes about lockout, tagout, or confined space entry. This wasn't that. The first rule said, do not acknowledge physical contact initiated by other personnel unless you can verify their work assignment for the current shift. The second one said, if you observe a colleague repeating an action more than 3 times without variation, leave the area and report to the control room immediately. I read them again. They still said the same thing. These are site policy, Kyle said. He was watching all 3 of us. Backed by HR and contractual obligation, you're required to keep the card on your person at all times, clipped inside your coveralls, not visible. The younger guy looked confused. What's this about repeating actions? It's policy, Kyle said. No elaboration. Yeah, but clip it inside your coveralls. The Siemens woman clipped hers without comment. I did the same. The younger guy hesitated, then followed. Kyle checked each of us. Made sure the lanyards were tucked in, the cards out of sight. You'll get used to them, he said. Don't overthink it. Just follow the rules, and you'll be fine. I didn't argue, but I walked away from that platform with the card sitting heavy against my chest, the laminated edge cold through my shirt. It nagged at me. Not loud, not urgent, just there. A quiet itch in the back of my head that said this mattered more than Kyle was saying. I didn't know why yet, but I felt it. The first few days, I just kept my head down and did what I was told. That's mostly what the job was anyway. Paperwork, access prep, making sure the electrical and mechanical techs had what they needed before they climbed into a nacelle or dropped into a cable vault. I logged tools in and out, updated the permit to work board in the main ops room, and ran spares between platforms when someone radioed down. It wasn't complicated. Offshore wind work rarely is, once you know where everything lives. I tried to treat the rule card the same way I treated every other weird offshore tradition I'd run into over the years. Don't whistle on a rig. Don't bring a suitcase aboard. Don't rename a vessel. Superstitions, mostly. Old habits from fishing crews and oil platforms that stuck around because nobody wanted to be the one who broke them and then had something go wrong. The card felt different, but I figured if I just followed it and kept quiet, it'd blend into background noise with everything else. Kyle ran the site hard. That became obvious pretty fast. He moved through the ops platform twice a shift, checking the board, scanning faces, making sure lanyards were tucked in and coveralls zipped. He didn't small talk, didn't joke. He'd stop next to you, wait until you noticed him, then ask a direct question about your task or your PPE or whether you'd read the updated weather brief. If you hesitated, he'd wait. Just stand there until you gave him the answer he wanted. Most of the long-term crew didn't react to him much. They'd answer, nod, go back to work. But I noticed they also didn't linger in the corridors when he was around, and they kept their radio traffic clipped and professional anytime his call sign came through. Sky was the one who helped me learn the platform's habits. She worked electrical, mostly cable terminations and circuit testing, and we ended up paired on a lot of access prep because her tasks overlapped with the mechanical schedules I was supporting. She was good at her job, efficient, didn't waste time, didn't second-guess herself. On the second day, she showed me how the tool sign-out actually worked, which wasn't the way Kyle had explained it during the safety brief. Technically, you were supposed to log every item on the digital system and get a supervisor's signature before taking anything up tower. In practice, the long-term crew kept a separate paper log in the ops room that tracked the real-time movements, and they only updated the digital system at end of shift. It saved about 20 minutes per job. Kyle knows, Sky said when I asked if we'd get flagged for it. We were standing in front of the tool cage, and she was pulling torquey wrenches off the rack. He wrote the paper log himself. The digital systems for the Shore team. This one's for us. I added my initials next to hers on the sheet, so we keep 2 records. Yeah. She handed me a wrench. You get used to it. She didn't talk much beyond work, but she also didn't avoid me the way some of the older guys did. A few of them had that look, the one that said they'd seen new hires come and go and weren't interested in learning names until you'd been here a full rotation. Sky just treated me like I was part of the crew, gave me clear instructions, corrected me when I screwed up a torque sequence, and didn't make a thing out of it. On the 3rd afternoon, we were closing out a gearbox inspection on B-51, about 4 rows south of the main ops platform. I was finishing the paperwork while she packed her testing kit, and I made some comment about Kyle being pretty strict with the rules, but at least the work itself was straightforward. She didn't look up from her kit, just kept coiling a test lead. The card's not a joke. I stopped writing. What? The rule card. You've been treating it like it's just site policy. It's not. She clipped the lead into place and finally looked at me. Her expression was calm, but there was something careful in it. The long-term crew doesn't joke about it. Kyle doesn't enforce it because he likes rules. He enforces it because he has to. I didn't know what to say to that. I waited. Sky zipped the kit. Just don't blow it off. If something happens that matches one of those rules, you follow the card. You don't hesitate, you don't try to figure out if it makes sense. You just do it. Has something happened? She picked up the kit. I've been here 11 months. Yeah, something's happened. She didn't elaborate. I didn't push. But the way she said it stuck with me for the rest of the shift, and when I went to my bunk that night, I pulled the card out and read it again under the overhead light. Same 8 rules. Same small black font. Still didn't make sense, but Sky's voice kept playing back. It's not a joke. I tucked the card back inside my coveralls and turned off the light. The fog rolled in on the 3rd night. I'd seen heavy fog offshore before, the kind that cuts visibility down to 50 meters and makes the sea look flat and wrong. This was worse. It came in fast, maybe an hour after sunset, and it was so thick the turbines started disappearing row by row. First the outer edges of the array, then the midfield, then the ones close enough I should have been able to see their tower lights blinking red in the dark. By 2200 it felt like we were sitting in a cloud. No horizon, no sky, just gray-white nothing pressing in on all sides, and the sound of the waves hitting the transition piece somewhere below, muffled and distant. I stayed on the ops platform with Sky to close out a fault report before the night window tightened. The fault had come in just after dinner, some kind of grid synchronization error on B62 that needed manual verification and a written summary before the system would let us mark it resolved. Sky handled the technical side. I handled the paperwork. The ops room was quiet, just the 2 of us and the low hum of the server racks in the corner. One overhead light on, the rest dimmed for night ops. The big windows that usually showed the array just showed fog now, thick enough that I couldn't even see the railing outside. Sky finished the verification sequence and nodded at me. Good to close. I typed the final notes into the log, checked the timestamp, and submitted it. The system accepted it with a soft chime, and the fault code dropped off the board. That's it, I said. Sky leaned back in her chair and rubbed her eyes. She looked tired. We both did. Night shifts always dragged, but the fog made it worse. Made everything feel slower and closer and too still. I glanced at the clock on the wall. 0234. The radio crackled. Not loud. Just a soft pop of static from the unit mounted near the door, the one tuned to the general operations channel. It was the channel we used for platform-to-platform coordination, and it was usually quiet this late unless someone had an emergency or a weather update. The static cleared. A voice came through, clean and level. Male. No accent I could place. Bernard Luna, that was it. Just my name. Full name. Both parts. I froze. It hit me wrong immediately. Not because someone had used the radio. Not because it was late. Because the voice was too clear. No distortion, no distance, no environmental noise behind it. And because it came through on a channel that shouldn't even reach us. The General Ops channel was line of sight, platform to platform. The CTV used it. The main ops platform used it. But we were on B-47, and the signal range didn't stretch much past a few rows in good weather. In fog this thick, we shouldn't be hearing anything except the platforms right next to us. Skye was staring at me. Not at the radio, at me. Her face was completely still, and her eyes had that same careful look she'd had when she warned me about the card. Except now it was sharper, focused. She wasn't blinking. She was waiting. Waiting to see what I'd do. I looked at the radio. The red transmit light wasn't on. Nobody was actively talking. Just the open channel, hissing faintly, and the memory of my name hanging in the air between us. My hand didn't move toward the handset. I didn't reach for it. I didn't answer. I don't know why. Instinct, maybe. Or the way Skye was watching me. Or the fact that the voice had been too clean, too precise, and I couldn't think of a single reason why someone would call my full name on that channel at 0238 in fog so thick I couldn't see the next turbine over. The static hissed for another 5 seconds. Then the channel went dead. Not muted. Dead. The carrier wave dropped and the radio went silent, and the red standby light blinked once and stayed off. Skye let out a breath. Not loud. Just a small release, like she'd been holding it. I looked at her. She didn't say anything, didn't explain. She just held my eyes for a second, then looked back at the radio, and I understood. I'd just passed a test. I didn't know what the test was. Didn't know who'd been on the other end of that call, or why they'd used my name, or what would have happened if I'd answered. But I knew I'd passed, and I knew Skye had been waiting to see if I would. At 0252, I heard the foghorn. It came through the fog thick and low, not sharp or distant the way ship horns cut through weather from kilometers out. This one sounded close, really close. Maybe 30 meters away, maybe less. Hard to say in fog that dense. But the tone was wrong too. It didn't have that compressed blare you get from marine horns mounted high on a superstructure. This was lower, deeper, the kind of sound you feel in your chest before you actually hear it. I looked toward the window but couldn't see anything except fog pressed against the glass. No running lights, no vessel outline, nothing moving. Skye stood up from her chair, didn't say anything. The horn sounded again. Same pitch, same duration, maybe 5 seconds long, trailing off at the end. And it was coming from below the deck edge. I was sure of it, not from the water surface where a boat would sit. Below that. Inside the fog, somewhere underneath the platform. I don't know why I moved. Wasn't a decision. Just my feet carrying me toward the door before I'd thought it through. I figured maybe I could see the source if I got to the rail. Maybe it was some kind of equipment malfunction on the transition piece making noise I didn't recognize. Or a trapped air pocket in the support columns doing something weird with the pressure. That made sense. Offshore structures make all kinds of sounds. I pushed the door open and stepped onto the external platform. The cold hit me first, then the fog. Thick enough I couldn't see the railing 3 meters in front of me. The horn sounded again and I kept walking, one hand out in front, boots loud on the grating. Then something yanked me backwards hard enough my teeth clicked together. Skye had the back of my harness in both hands and she pulled me away from the rail I hadn't reached yet, dragging me 2 steps back before letting go. Her face was locked down, not angry, not scared, just completely focused. "Eyes down," she said. Count to 10 on your fingers. Do it now." I stared at her. "Now, Bernard." I looked down at my hands, brought them up in front of my chest where I could see them, started counting. 1 finger, 2, 3. My hands were shaking a little. Could have been the cold. Probably wasn't. 4, 5, 6. I realized I'd been holding my breath. Don't know for how long. Since the door, maybe, or earlier. I let it out slow and pulled in another one, colder than it should have been. 7, 8, 9. The foghorn didn't sound again. 10. I dropped my hands. Skye was still watching me, standing between me and the rail I couldn't see. Her shoulders were tight and her breathing was controlled, the way you breathe when you're forcing yourself to stay calm. "Back inside," she said. I followed her in. She shut the door behind us and twisted the handle lock even though we didn't usually lock it. Then she walked back to the desk, sat down, and stared at the monitor without touching the keyboard. I stayed by the door. My chest felt tight and my pulse was too fast. "What was that?" I said. "Doesn't matter." It sounded close. It was. "So what?" "Doesn't matter," she said again. Flat, final. "You didn't look over. That's what matters." I wanted to ask more. Wanted to know what I would have seen if she hadn't grabbed me. But the way she was sitting there, locked down and silent, told me I wasn't going to get an answer. Not tonight. The fog stayed thick until almost 0400. By the time it cleared enough to see the nearest turbine lights again, my hands had stopped shaking. Skye logged us both out at 0430 and we went to our bunks without talking. I didn't sleep much. After breakfast, 0700, instant coffee and something that was supposed to be scrambled eggs, Kyle found me in the corridor outside the galley and told me to follow him. Didn't say why. Just turned and walked toward the control room with his clipboard tucked under one arm. I figured I'd screwed something up. Maybe the fault report from last night. Maybe the fact I'd stepped outside during low visibility without radio clearance. That was technically a violation. Kyle was the type to write people up for that. The control room was empty. Kyle shut the door behind us, which he didn't usually do, and stood there for a second with his back to me. Then he turned around. "One question," he said. I waited. "Did you answer the radio call?" That was it. Just that. No preamble, no context. He already knew which call I meant. "No," I said. Kyle nodded once. Slow. Then his shoulders dropped maybe 2 centimeters and he exhaled through his nose. Not loud, but audible. The tightness in his jaw eased and he blinked twice, the way you do when you've been staring at something too long and finally look away. He didn't say "good job," didn't say "I'm glad," didn't say anything that sounded like congratulations or relief. Just stood there and let the pressure leak out of his posture like a hydraulic line releasing. "Okay," he said. "That's it?" "That's it." He picked up his clipboard from where he'd set it on the console and checked something on the top sheet. Then he looked at me again, and for the first time since I'd met him, his expression wasn't locked down into that flat professional mask. He looked tired. Really tired. The kind of tired that's been building for months. "You're doing fine," he said. "Keep it that way." Then he opened the door and walked out, leaving me standing there next to the server racks with no idea what I'd just passed. The rest of the week ran close to normal. That was the part that got to me. Not the foghorn, not the radio call. The fact that after all that, everything just kept going. Same schedule, same tasks, same meal times and shift rotations and permit to work updates. Skye went back to running cable tests. Kyle went back to his clipboard rounds. I logged tools and updated boards and prepped access permits for gearbox inspections that ran exactly the way they were supposed to. It should have been reassuring. Probably would have been on a normal site. But here it felt wrong. Like we were all pretending something hadn't happened when we knew it had. I started watching the turbines. Didn't mean to. Just found myself looking out the windows more than I needed to. tracking the rows of white towers and spinning blades during the day, checking the aviation lights at night. Standard setup. Red lights on the nacelles and tower midsections, blinking in sync across the array so pilots could see the field boundary. They're supposed to flash together. Coordinated timing, whole grid lit up in unison every few seconds. But certain lights didn't stay in sync. First time I noticed was on day 6. I was in the ops room updating a maintenance log and glanced out the window during a blink cycle. Most of the array flashed red at the same time, clean, synchronized. But 3 turbines in the northwest corner, B31, B32, and B41, blinked half a second late. Then they blinked again. Double flash, quick stutter, like a heartbeat skipping. I almost said something. Then I saw Kyle across the room, staring out the same window with his hand on his radio. He waited maybe 10 seconds. Then he keyed the mic. "All personnel, this is Site Authority. Cease tower climbs until further notice. Acknowledge by call sign." The acknowledgements came back one by one. Sky, 2 contractors I hadn't learned the names of yet. A Siemens tech working on turbine B55. Everyone confirmed. Nobody asked why. Kyle didn't explain. Just updated the board to mark those 3 turbines as no access and went back to his rounds. It happened again 2 days later. Different turbines, same double blink, same radio call from Kyle, same cease climbs order, same silence about why. I didn't ask. Neither did anyone else. The long-term crew just stopped what they were doing, logged out of their tasks, and moved to a different job. Smooth, practiced, like they'd done it before. That was worse than the foghorn somehow. The fact that this was normal enough they had a procedure for it. The CTV came in on a Tuesday morning. Same boat, same skipper. Jonathan Allen throttled back smooth and brought her alongside B47 just after 8. I was in the ops room finishing a torque verification log when Kyle appeared in the doorway and told me to meet the boat. I grabbed my jacket and headed down. The wind was up, maybe 15 knots from the east, cold enough to sting. I got to the platform just as Jonathan's deckhand was tying off. 3 people stepped off. 2 I didn't recognize, both in Siemens Gamesa gear. The third was wearing contractor coveralls with Garrett Taylor patches on the shoulders and chest. He looked about my height, maybe a bit shorter. Wiry build. Dark hair pushed back under a beanie. He was carrying a hard case in one hand and a duffel in the other. Kyle was already at the ladder base with his clipboard. I hung back near the rail while Kyle did his document check. Same routine. Slow. Thorough. Stopping on every page. The contractor handed over his folder without saying much. I caught his accent when he answered Kyle's question about his sea survival cert. Spanish, I thought. Maybe South American. Kyle finished the check and waved me over. "Bernard, this is Grayson Becker, Garrett Taylor contractor. You're with him today." Grayson nodded at me. Hey, I said. Kyle produced the laminated card from his jacket. Same blue lanyard, same small print. He handed it to Grayson and started the same speech I'd heard 2 weeks ago. Site policy, HR-backed, contractual obligation. Keep it on your person, tucked inside, not visible. Grayson took the card and read it. His eyebrows went up. He flipped it over, checked the back, then looked at Kyle. "This serious?" "Yes," Kyle said. "Okay." Grayson clipped the lanyard to his belt loop and tucked the card inside his coveralls. Fast, casual, like clipping on a dosimeter or a gas detector. Just another piece of kit. Kyle checked to make sure it was tucked in, then told us we had an inspection run scheduled for the afternoon. Blade pitch systems. Routine checks across 6 turbines in the E-block. Grayson would handle the technical work. I'd assist and log. Grayson nodded. "Got it." Kyle left us there. Grayson dropped his duffel and opened the hard case. Inside was a borescope kit, neatly packed. Cables, probe heads, a small monitor. He checked the contents quickly, hands moving with the kind of efficiency that comes from doing the same check 100 times. "You been here long?" he asked. "Couple weeks." "How's the site?" "Runs tight," I said. He glanced up at me, then back at the case. "Yeah, I got that impression." We didn't talk much after that. I showed him where to stow his gear, pointed him toward the galley, and told him we'd meet in the ops room at 1300. I went back to my logs. At lunch, I saw Grayson sitting with the two Siemens guys. They were talking shop, something about rotor imbalance and vibration sensors. Grayson was animated, gesturing with his fork. He laughed once, loud enough that I heard it across the galley. I ate my sandwich and didn't join them. Skye came in halfway through and sat across from me. She glanced toward Grayson's table, then back at me. "You're with the contractor?" "Yeah." He read the card. Kyle gave it to him this morning. She nodded slowly, chewing, and clipped it on. Didn't ask questions. "Good," she said, but her expression didn't match the word. I finished my sandwich and left her there. At 1300, Grayson met me in the ops room. He'd swapped his beanie for a hard hat and had the borescope case slung over one shoulder. He looked ready. Kyle briefed us. 6 turbines, E14, E17, E22, E23, E29, E31. Blade pitch alarms had been flagged during the last automation sweep. Probably sensor drift, but it needed manual verification before the system would clear them. Grayson would inspect, I'd document, and handle access prep. Grayson asked about weather windows. Kyle told him we had until 2200 before the wind picked up again. Grayson said that was plenty. We took the platform boat out to E14 first. The inspection went smooth. Grayson knew his job. He climbed into the nacelle, ran his checks, called out readings, and I logged them. No conversation beyond what was necessary. The pitch motors on E14 were fine. Sensor calibration was off by 0.3 degrees. Grayson adjusted it, verified, and we moved on. E22 and E23 were the same. Quick, efficient, no issues. By the time we reached E17, it was nearly 2000. The light was fading. Sky gone gray-blue, horizon blurred. Turbines lit up red across the array. Grayson was still moving at the same pace, task-focused. He didn't look tired. I was starting to feel it, though. My shoulders were tight from climbing, and my knees were sore. We docked at E17 and climbed up. Inside the tower, the air was still. Cooler than outside, but not cold. The usual smell: grease, metal, sea salt. Grayson headed straight for the lift. I followed. We rode up to the nacelle level in silence. The lift hummed. My ears popped. When the doors opened, Grayson stepped out and headed toward the pitch control cabinet. I stayed near the lift, pulling out my tablet to start the log. That's when I smelled it. Bleach. Faint at first. Just a trace, like someone had wiped down a surface an hour ago and the smell hadn't cleared yet. I looked around. The nacelle was empty. Just us, the machinery, and the low hum of the gearbox. Grayson was already opening the cabinet, pulling cables. I stayed where I was, tablet in hand, watching him. The smell got stronger. Not a lot, but enough that I noticed it wasn't fading. It was building, slow and steady, like something was evaporating nearby. I glanced toward the far end of the nacelle. Nothing there, just shadows and equipment. Grayson called out a voltage reading. I logged it. The smell was still climbing. I looked at Grayson. He hadn't reacted, didn't wrinkle his nose, didn't pause, didn't glance around, just kept working. I pulled the laminated card out from inside my coveralls. Rule 6. If you detect a strong chemical smell, bleach, ammonia, sulfur, with no identifiable source, evacuate the structure immediately and do not return until cleared by site authority. The smell wasn't strong yet, but it was getting there. I looked at Grayson again, still focused, still working. I tucked the card back inside and made a decision. "We're leaving," I said. Grayson didn't look up. "What?" "We're leaving. Now." He stopped, probe in hand, and turned toward me. "Why?" "Doesn't matter. We're going. I've got 2 more checks." "Now," I said. He stared at me. I didn't blink. The smell was stronger, definitely stronger. Grayson's face shifted. Confusion first, then annoyance. "Is this about the card?" I didn't answer. I just walked toward the lift and hit the button. He didn't move. "Grayson," I said, "let's go." He looked at the cabinet, then back at me. His jaw tightened. "This is superstitious bullshit," he said. "Maybe. I'm not leaving a job half done because of some—" "Then stay," I said. The lift doors opened. I stepped inside. He swore under his breath in Spanish. Then he grabbed his case and followed me in. The doors closed. We dropped past the service level. Grayson was quiet, but I could feel the tension radiating off him. He thought I was paranoid. Maybe I was. The lift slowed. Then the radio on my belt crackled. Static first. Then a voice. Male, calm, clear. "Bernard Luna. Employee number 44721. My stomach dropped. Grayson's hand moved toward his radio. I slapped it away. "Don't," I said. "What the hell?" "Don't touch it." The radio went silent, just static again. Grayson stared at me. His hand was still halfway to his belt. "That was you," he said. "They called you." "Yeah. So answer it." "No." "Why not?" The lift doors opened. Ground level. I stepped out fast, boots loud on the grating. Grayson followed, still talking. "If someone's calling you, you answer. That's radio discipline. Not this time." "Bernard." I turned on him. We were near the tower exit now, close to the external door. The sound of the waves was louder here. "Listen to me," I said. "You don't answer that call. You don't respond. You don't acknowledge it. You keep moving and you don't look back." He opened his mouth, closed it. His eyes searched my face. "What the fuck is going on here?" he said. I didn't have an answer that would make sense. So I just said, "Something wants us to respond, and we're not giving it what it wants." I pushed open the door and stepped outside. Grayson followed. We got back to B-47 maybe 20 minutes later. The platform boat ride was quiet except for the engine and Grayson muttering something in Spanish I didn't catch. My hands were still tight on the rail when Jonathan brought us alongside. Kyle was waiting at the top of the ladder, not near the door, not doing his usual rounds, right there at the ladder base with his clipboard tucked under one arm and his other hand on the rail, watching us climb up like he'd been standing there the whole time. Grayson cleared the top first and stepped aside. I came up second, and Kyle's eyes went straight to me. "Did you lock the turbine door behind you?" That was it. That was the question. Not why we came back early. Not what happened at E-17. Not why we left 3 turbines unfinished on a 6-turbine inspection run. Just whether I'd locked the door. "Yeah," I said. Pulled it shut. Heard the latch catch. Kyle nodded once. His shoulders dropped maybe half an inch. He shifted his weight, and his jaw unclenched just enough that I could see it. "Good," he said. Grayson looked between us. "That's it? You're not going to ask why we—" "Log says you evacuated due to environmental concern," Kyle said without looking at him. "That's procedure. You followed it." "There was a smell," Grayson said. "Bleach or something. And the radio. Environmental concern," Kyle repeated. "Flat, final. I'll update the board. E-17's marked no access until further notice." He turned and walked back toward the ops room with his clipboard against his chest and his boots making the same even rhythm they always did. Grayson stared after him. What the hell kind of safety debrief is that? I didn't answer. I was still thinking about the way Kyle had asked the question. Not if I'd secured the site or followed lockout procedure. Just if I'd locked the door. like he needed to know something was still inside. I didn't see Kyle again until maybe 2 hours later. I was in the small break room off the galley trying to get my head straight with bad coffee and a protein bar I wasn't really eating. Grayson had gone to his bunk. Sky was up tower on a termination job. The rest of the crew was scattered across the array doing night window prep work before the wind picked up. I should have been doing the same, logging tools, updating permits, clearing the board for tomorrow's schedule. Instead, I was staring at the CCTV monitor mounted in the corner above the microwave. We had 4 feeds rotating on a 10-second cycle: ops room, main deck, boat landing, tool storage, standard stuff. Most of the time, nobody watched it except Kyle during his rounds, and even then it was just a glance to make sure nobody was where they shouldn't be. The feed switched to main deck. Kyle walked into frame from the left, carrying something bundled in his arms. Dark fabric, maybe a tarp or a blanket, wrapped around something I couldn't make out. Not big. Maybe the size of a toolbox or a small duffel. He was alone. He walked steady and deliberate across the deck, toward the far rail where the fog was still thick enough to blur the edge. The camera angle wasn't great, but I could see his back, his shoulders, the way he held the bundle close to his chest. He reached the rail. He stopped. Then he lifted the bundle with both hands and threw it over the side. I watched it fall. Or I tried to. The fog was too thick and the camera resolution wasn't good enough to track it all the way down. It just sort of disappeared into the gray-white nothing below the rail. No splash, no sound I could hear from inside. Just gone. Kyle stood there for maybe 5 seconds with his hands on the rail and his head tilted down like he was watching the water. Then he turned and walked back the way he'd come. The feed cycled to the tool storage room and I was looking at empty shelving and a pegboard with wrenches. I sat back in the plastic chair and rubbed my eyes. Probably trash disposal. We did that sometimes when the bins were full or something couldn't go back on the CTV. Old rags, broken equipment, stuff that wouldn't contaminate the water or float. Offshore work generated a lot of waste, and sometimes it was easier to pitch it than log it. That's what I told myself. But Kyle didn't usually handle trash. That was crew work. And he didn't usually do it alone in the fog at 2200 hours with the careful, slow way he'd carried that bundle like it mattered. I finished the coffee. It was cold. I was tired of this. Tired of watching people follow rules I didn't understand. Tired of being managed by cards and procedures nobody would explain. Tired of Kyle's one-question debriefs and Sky's warnings and the long-term crew's practiced silence. If I was going to work here for 4 more weeks, I wanted to know what I was working around. The ops room was empty when I got there. Sky's termination job was taking longer than scheduled, and the night crew was spread thin across E Block and F Block doing pre-maintenance checks. I sat down at the main console and logged into SCADA. SCADA, Supervisory Control and Data Acquisition, was the system that ran the whole array. Turbine performance, grid synchronization, fault codes, environmental sensors, everything got logged and time-stamped and stored in databases that went back months. I'd used it before for pulling maintenance histories and checking sensor drift. Standard technician access. Nothing restricted. I pulled up the event log and filtered by turbine ID. B31, B32, B41. The 3 turbines from day 6. The ones that had blinked late and triggered Kyle's cease climbs order. The log loaded. Rows and rows of data. Timestamps on the left. Event codes in the middle. Status messages on the right. Most of it looked normal. Blade pitch adjustments, yaw corrections, power output fluctuations, the usual automated cycles. I scrolled down to the date and time I remembered. 1600 hours. The double blink. There. Right at 16:03:12, all 3 turbines showed the same fault code. Synxer 2. Grid synchronization error. Common enough. Usually meant a phase mismatch or a momentary voltage drop. But underneath the fault code, there was a raw text message I'd never seen before. Do not feed light. All caps. No punctuation except the periods. Same message on all 3 turbines. Same timestamp down to the second. I stared at it. SCADA didn't generate messages like that. It used standardized codes, error strings, diagnostic outputs, not sentences, not instructions. I scrolled further. Day 8. Different turbines. B14, B19, B20. Same double blink pattern I'd seen from the window. Same Sincere Osro 2 code. Same message, do not feed light. I checked the other dates. Every time Kyle had called a cease climbs order, every time the turbines blinked out of sync, the message was there in the raw text log, aligned exactly with the minute it happened. Do not feed light. My hands were cold. I hit print. The console printer hummed and spat out 3 pages of log data with the timestamps and messages highlighted in the default format. I logged out, picked up the pages, folded them once and tucked them inside my coveralls next to the laminated card. Then I went to find Kyle. He was in the control room doing end-of-shift updates with his tablet propped against the console and his coffee mug half empty next to the keyboard. I knocked on the doorframe even though the door was open. He looked up, saw me, saw the papers in my hand. His face didn't change, but something behind his eyes did. "Bernard," he said. Careful, neutral. "I pulled the SCADA logs," I said. "For the turbines, you keep blocking." I stepped inside and unfolded the pages, put them on the console in front of him. "I was looking for a technical explanation," I said. "Sensor malfunction, software glitch, something that made sense." Kyle looked down at the printout. His hand moved toward it, then stopped halfway like he didn't want to touch it. "Instead, I found this," I said. I tapped the message with my finger. "Do not feed light. Same message, same turbines. Every time you call a cease climbs." Kyle's jaw tightened. He picked up his mug and set it down again without drinking. "I want to know what it means," I said. He didn't answer right away. He looked at the printout, looked at the door behind me, looked back at the papers like they'd cornered him and he was trying to find a way out. Then he exhaled through his nose, and his shoulders sagged. "You shouldn't have pulled that," he said quietly. "But I did." "Yeah." He rubbed his face with both hands. "Yeah, you did." He stood up, walked to the door, shut it. When he turned back around, his expression had changed. Not angry, not scared exactly. Tired, resigned, like he'd been carrying something heavy for a long time and had just been told he had to explain why. "It means what it says," Kyle said. "Don't feed light. That's not an explanation." "No," he said. "It's not." He sat back down, pulled the printout closer, stared at the message like he'd seen it 100 times before. "The turbines generate power," he said slowly. "Rotational energy converted to electrical current sent back to shore through subsea cables. Standard operation." I waited. "But sometimes," Kyle continued, "something else draws on that current. Something that shouldn't be there. It pulls power from specific turbines in specific patterns. When it does, the grid sync drops and the lights blink out of phase." "What pulls the power?" "I don't know." His voice was flat, honest. "Nobody does. It's been happening since the array went live. Operations documented it, tried to trace it, couldn't isolate the source. So they put a message in the system." "Not operations," Kyle said. "The system put it there, by itself. First time it happened, the message appeared in the raw text log with no user input, no admin access. Just there." He looked up at me. "Do not feed light," he said. "We think it means don't let it take more. Don't give it access. Don't let it build." "Build into what?" Kyle's mouth pressed into a thin line. "I don't know that either," he said. I told Bernard the rules weren't normal safety measures. We were still in the control room. The printout sat between us on the console. The door was shut. My coffee had gone cold in the mug next to the keyboard. I said the platform was acting like a lid. The turbines were basically posts in a barrier. The whole array. 165 turbines across Hornsea 2, all of them, part of the same structure, the same containment system, even if most of the shore team didn't know it and the contractors never would. Bernard stood there with his arms crossed, waiting. I said the grid synchronization wasn't a fault. It was a response. Something outside the array had been learning patterns for months. Maybe longer, I didn't know the full timeline, and it had been pushing the lights, testing them, trying to turn the aviation beacons into a signal instead of just markers. The double blink was the system resisting. When turbines started flashing out of sync, it meant something was trying to override the automation and use the lights to call. Bernard asked what it was calling. I said I didn't know. Nobody did. The technical reports used words like environmental anomaly and localized interference pattern, but that was just documentation language to keep the operational license clean. What mattered was the turbines were the only thing between the platform and open water, and the lights couldn't be allowed to become a beacon. He asked why I'd been blocking climbs every time the double blink happened. I said because the turbines were compromised during the event window. If someone was inside the nacelle or up in the hub when the override attempt spiked, the same thing that pushed the lights could push them, or pull them. The rule was simple. Nobody goes near a turbine that's showing response behavior until the event clears and the system stabilizes. Bernard looked at the printout again. He asked about the message. Do not feed light. I said it meant, don't give it what it wants. Don't let the pattern solidify. Don't let the override become permanent. The SCADA message was a manual flag I'd been entering every time the double blink triggered, so the shore team's automation monitoring would skip those turbines and not try to autocorrect the fault. If they corrected it remotely, they'd stabilize the lights back into perfect sync, and that would complete the pattern. That would feed it. Bernard was quiet for a few seconds. Then he asked how long this had been happening. I said 5 years, maybe more. He asked if anyone had been hurt. I pulled my tablet toward me, unlocked it, opened the incident archive I wasn't supposed to have local access to. But Evelyn had given me the credentials for anyway because someone on site needed to know the history. I scrolled to the summary file and turned the screen so Bernard could see it. 3 lost persons incidents across Hornsea assets. Different platforms, different crews, different weather windows. All of them written up as man overboard. None of the bodies recovered. None of the fall alarms triggered, even though every worker wore a harness with an automatic sensor that was supposed to ping the ops room the second someone went over a rail. The alarms never went off. The people just disappeared. Bernard scanned the dates. He asked what the common factor was. I said fog. Every incident happened during heavy fog. 2 of them happened between 0200 and 0400 hours. One happened at 1800 during a weather front that came in fast and dropped visibility to under 10 meters in less than 20 minutes. All 3 workers were experienced. All 3 had been on site for weeks or months. All 3 had the laminated card and knew the rules. Bernard asked if they broke a rule. I said I didn't know. The incident reports didn't include that level of detail. What I did know was that fog seemed to make the boundary weaker, like it blurred the separation between the platform and whatever was outside the array. And once someone's name got used, full name, employee number, call sign, anything specific enough to identify them, they were marked. The voice on the radio wasn't random. It was targeted. Bernard's face went tight. He asked if that was why I'd asked if he answered the call. I said yes. He asked what would have happened if he had. I said I didn't know that either, but I'd seen what happened to people who engaged. They started hearing their name more often. They started seeing things at the edge of the fog that shouldn't be there. They started walking toward the rails during low-visibility windows without realizing they were doing it until someone pulled them back. Bernard asked if anyone had answered and survived. I said one person. A Siemens contractor about 8 months ago. He answered a radio call using his own name, thinking it was his supervisor calling him back to ops. He spent the next 6 days hearing his name every night between 02 and 04, always from a different direction, always just outside whatever room he was in. On day 7, Kyle, on day 7, I sent him back to shore on the first CTV and told Evelyn to pull his contract for medical reasons. I don't know what happened to him after that. He's not dead because I checked the reports, but he's not offshore anymore either. Bernard looked at me. He asked if I'd ever answered. I said no, not once. That's why I was still here. At 02:59 the next morning, I went into the control room with Bernard and Sky. The 03-hour rule was number 8 on the card. Between 0300 and 0310, all personnel must remain in designated interior spaces with both hands visible on a flat surface. No radio communication, no external access, no movement toward doors or windows. I'd been running this protocol every night for 11 months. Sky had been doing it almost as long. Bernard was new. I unlocked the control room, turned on the overhead light, and checked the camera feeds on the main monitor. 4 views: ops room, main deck, boat landing, heli deck. All of them clear. No fog yet. The timestamp in the corner read 02:59:14. Sky sat down at the left side of the console. I sat in the center. Bernard took the right. I told him to put both hands flat on the table, palms down, and don't lift them until I said. He put his hands down. I put mine down. Sky already had hers down, fingers spread, breathing controlled. The clock hit 03:00. The camera feeds turned grainy, not offline, still live, still transmitting, but the image quality dropped like someone had smeared Vaseline on the lenses. The helideck feed filled with fog, thick, white, rolling in from nowhere, no wind to push it, just there, all at once. I kept my hands flat. My pulse was up, but my breathing stayed even. I'd done this before. I knew what was coming. The radio mounted on the wall crackled. A woman's voice came through, calm and professional, with a faint accent I couldn't place. She said, "Sky Gross, electrical technician, certification number 66329. Sky didn't move. Her fingers pressed harder against the table, but she didn't lift them. The radio hissed. Another voice, male, older, Yorkshire accent. Jonathan Allen, vessel master, Hornsea Marine Operations. I felt my jaw tighten. Jonathan was on the CTV, docked at B-47's boat landing 2 levels below us. He was asleep in the crew cabin. That wasn't him. The radio crackled again. A third voice, younger, smoother. Bernard's voice, same tone, same cadence. It said, "This is Bernard Luna. I'm outside. Let me in." Bernard's real hand stayed on the table. His knuckles went white. I didn't look at him. I kept my eyes on the monitor. The helideck feed was completely obscured now. Just fog and faint shadows that might have been equipment, or might have been nothing. The radio kept going. More voices. A woman with a Scandinavian accent saying Evelyn's full name and employee title. A man with a Spanish accent I didn't recognize. My own voice, flat and tired, saying, "Kyle Thompson, Site Authority, 0306 Standing Order." I didn't move. At 0303, the door handle twitched. Not a full turn. Just a quarter rotation, like someone was testing it, checking if it was locked. I'd locked it. I always locked it. The handle twitched again, then stopped. Sky's breathing hitched, but she kept her hands down. The monitor flickered. SCADA threw a yellow warning banner across the top of the screen. Aviation light test active, E17. I looked at the alert, E17. The turbine Bernard and Grayson had evacuated yesterday. The one with the bleach smell and the locked door. On the camera feed, grainy, barely visible through the fog, I saw the distant flash of a turbine light, then another, a double blink, quick stutter, half-second delay, exactly like the pattern I'd been blocking for months. The foghorn sounded, low, deep, close enough to feel in my chest. It came from below the platform, underneath the deck, same as the night Bernard had almost walked to the rail. My hand lifted. I didn't decide to do it. My arm just moved, fingers coming off the table, reaching toward the radio like I was going to key the mic and respond to my own name, tell them to stop the light test, fix the turbine, stop the pattern. Bernard grabbed my wrist and slammed my hand back down onto the console hard enough to rattle the keyboard. The foghorn cut dead. Something hit the door. Not a knock, a slam. Full body weight against metal, hard enough that the frame shook and the lock rattled, and I heard the screws in the hinges creak. Skye made a sound in her throat but didn't move. Bernard kept his hand on my wrist, pinning it to the table. His other hand stayed flat beside the monitor. The timestamp read 03:06:47. I counted seconds in my head, 13 left. The door shook again, then stopped. At 03:07, the camera feeds cleared. The grain disappeared. The helideck showed empty deck, wet metal, normal night visibility. No fog. I exhaled. My hand was shaking under Bernard's grip. He let go. Skye lifted her hand slowly, wiped her palms on her thighs, and stood up without saying anything. She unlocked the door, checked the corridor, then left. Bernard looked at me. He asked if I was okay. I said yeah. I was fine. It happens sometimes. He asked what happened. I said I almost answered. I almost lifted my hand and stopped the test and fed the pattern. If he hadn't grabbed me, I would have done it. And I didn't know what would have happened after that, but it wouldn't have been good. Bernard asked why E17 specifically. I said I didn't know. Maybe because he'd been inside it. Maybe because the door was locked and something was still in there, stuck in the nacelle, trying to finish what it started. Maybe the light test was automatic and SCADA had flagged it for maintenance overnight. Or maybe something had triggered it manually from outside the system. I didn't know. What I knew was the 03:00 window was over and we were still here and nobody had answered. That was enough. At 03:14, the radio crackled again. Different channel, Marine Band. Jonathan's voice came through, actual Jonathan this time, stressed and clipped. B-47 Ops. This is CTV Windrunner, Mayday Relay. We have a man missing from AFD deck. Last seen approximately 03:02. No fall alarm, no visual. Request immediate search coordination. I grabbed the handset. I asked for vessel name and registry. Jonathan confirmed it was a supply tender that had been running night transfer between F Block and the ops platform. Crew of 4, one man unaccounted for during shift change when they docked at 03:04. They'd done a sweep of the vessel. He wasn't aboard. The aft deck was wet. The rail was clear. No one saw him go over. I told Jonathan to hold position, mark the time, and stand by for coordination with shore-based search and rescue. I hung up. Bernard was standing in the doorway. He'd heard it. I said the timing matched. The man went missing at 03:02, right in the middle of the window. The radio had called Jonathan's name at 03:01. The fog had been thick. The door handle had moved at 03:03. Bernard asked if the missing man had answered. I said probably. Or he'd gone outside. Or he'd looked over the rail when he heard something calling from the water. Any of those would have been enough. Bernard said it was testing names like keys. I said, yeah, that's exactly what it was doing. By daylight, the Ørsted rep started formal reporting. Evelyn Santos coordinated from the ops platform via satellite phone, keeping her voice calm and professional, walking the shore team through incident documentation protocols, timestamps, personnel manifests, weather data. She didn't mention the 03:00 window. She didn't mention the foghorn or the radio calls or the double blink on E17. She wrote it up as a man overboard during a routine transfer, possible slip on wet deck, ongoing search and rescue operations, next of kin notification pending. I sat in the control room and watched her through the window, phone pressed to her ear, tablet balanced on her knee, face blank. She controlled what left the platform. That was her job. Same as mine was keeping people away from compromised turbines and making sure nobody answered the radio. We all had our roles. Bernard found me in the galley around 9. Whoa. I was drinking coffee that tasted like rust and staring at the wall. He sat down across from me. He said I had to leave. I asked what he meant. He said the cycle had learned my name well enough to use it without help. It had called me by full name and title during the O3 Nor window. It had made me lift my hand. I was containment now, same as the guy Bernard had told me about. The Siemens contractor who'd answered and spent 6 days hearing his name every night. I said I didn't answer. Bernard said it didn't matter. I'd responded. I'd moved. That was enough. He said if I stayed, it would keep pushing. It would use my name again tomorrow night and the night after, and eventually I'd answer, or I'd walk outside, or I'd do something that finished the pattern. And then I'd be gone, and someone else would have to take over site authority, and they'd have to learn all of this from scratch while people kept disappearing. He said I had to leave immediately. First boat. Today. I said I couldn't just abandon the site. He said I wasn't abandoning it. I was protecting it. If I stayed and got taken, that was worse than leaving and letting someone else step in with clean slate. I looked at my coffee. I didn't argue. He was right. I took the first boat back to Hull. Jonathan piloted. He didn't ask questions. He knew something had happened. He'd relayed the mayday. He'd seen the fog. He'd heard the radio chatter, but he didn't push. I sat near the starboard window with my duffel between my feet and the laminated card in my pocket, watching the turbines shrink behind us until they were just white dots on the horizon. Then nothing. I resigned within 2 weeks, sent the email to Dalton, confirmed I was breaking contract, paid the penalty out of my savings. I didn't care. I wasn't going back offshore. Not to Hornsea, not to any other wind farm, not to any platform where the fog could roll in and something could call my name from the water. I got a job in Hull doing facility maintenance for a logistics company. Boring work. Fluorescent lights, climate control, no radios, no towers, no fog. I kept the laminated card in my wallet. I don't know why. I just did. On clear nights near Withersea, I still drive out to the coast and watch the turbines. You can see them from shore if the visibility's good, distant and white, blinking red in the dark. I watch for the double blink. I watch until they vanish into the horizon. I haven't seen it yet. But I keep looking.